What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? How tonight was not the night to debut for Jordan Lawlar as the Dbacks lose Game 2 to the San Francisco Giants. And if Erod has a bad start, should the Dbacks replace him in the rotation with a little Ryne Nelson?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist, and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode, we are discussing Jordan Lawlar's rough debut and the D-backs rough game in general. Is this the most talented D-backs infield we've ever seen? And should Ryne Nelson replace Erod in the rotation if he has a bad start in the finale? So we got a jam-packed pod for you guys as always. But first, I want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. We try to go live on YouTube Sunday through Thursday after D-backs games when I can. I want it to be an interactive show. Don't be afraid to drop a comment in the YouTube section because I want to be interactive with the community, reading comments live on air. So please drop a comment if you're watching this live. But also, don't forget, please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube and also follow me on social media because that is where I tweet before I go live at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's get into the podcast. All right, back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And now let's discuss Jordan Lawlar's debut and the D-backs dropping Game 2 to the San Francisco Giants, because when previewing this game, we talked a lot about how it was the old versus the new. Brandon Pfaadt versus Robbie Ray. D-backs new toy versus their old toy. And entering this matchup, I felt great about Brandon Pfaadt. He's been the D-backs ace all season. He's been fantastic. The Giants, they've been very good in Robbie Ray's starts, but I just felt so confident in Pfaadt entering the start. He's been an automatic 6 innings pitch every single start this season, except for this one, as Brandon Pfaadt finally had his first stinker of the year. 4 innings, 4 earned runs, 3 walks. The second inning of this game just completely tanked Brandon Pfaadt as he struggled to get through each batter as he was walking guys. Then he gave up a grand slam. It was by far the worst inning I've seen from Brandon Pfaadt all season long. And even outside of that inning, it felt like every at-bat in this game was 8, 9 pitches long. The guy, give the Giants hitters credit. They were making Brandon Pfaadt work in this one. Don't know if they saw something in his delivery. Don't know if Brandon Pfaadt was tipping pitches, or if it was just one of those nights where your starter just doesn't have it. It happens. Brandon Pfaadt is still young. I think it's okay if he was due for a stinker. I'm not going to look at this game and have big proclamations like we should be concerned about Brandon Pfaadt moving forward. He's not a big game pitcher. You can't trust him in these divisional matchups. That's not how I feel at all. I just feel like Brandon Pfaadt had himself a stinker. Maybe he was tipping pitches, but I'm okay just throwing this one away and forgetting about it. Let's just move on for this one, because even though Brandon Pfaadt didn't have his A-level stuff tonight, the start could have been a lot worse. I mean, after that second inning, it felt like this could have been a Merrill Kelly-esque start like in New York against the Yankees where he gave up 9 earned runs. I thought Brandon Pfaadt was on his way to having one of those outings, but he did enough to keep the game close, just give up the 4 runs. And I actually like the fact that Torey Lovullo kept Fott out there to help him work through his struggles. Like watching Fott, I was like, he clearly does not have it. He's clearly searching for stuff. The command wasn't there. He was leaving things hanging in the middle of the zone. Like it was not a good Fott. But I actually liked Torey Lovullo leaving him out there. When it's a reliever and we have the lead late in the game, I don't like it. But Fott's been fantastic all season long. And if you wanted your starter to work through his struggles, I would have been okay. And if Fott had a start like Merrill Kelly in the in New York against the Yankees, I would have been okay if Torey Lovullo made Brandon Fott wear this one as well. But he did just enough to keep this game close. Unfortunately, it didn't matter because the offense outside the first inning really did nothing. And it was a pretty lifeless offensive performance from this D-backs team after coming out the gates hot in the first inning, multiple runners on, 3 runs in the first. This team offensively did nothing the rest of the game. Once Marte grounded out with the bases loaded and 1 out, it felt like all the momentum in this game was just completely over. And we can't overlook that Ketel Marte was on a heater against the LA Dodgers. And then all of a sudden, Torey Lovullo decides to sit Ketel Marte. And since then, he's been 0 for 9, I believe. Like that's one of those decisions. You look back at your team and it's like, why are we sitting our best players in pivotal matchups when they're hot? That's one of those Torey Lovullo decisions that just doesn't make any sense. And because he made that decision, now Ketel Marte is back to being in a slump after coming off a heater. Why would you sit Marte in that situation? Jordan Lawlar, he also didn't have himself the greatest debut. Offensively, he didn't do anything, didn't come through with runners in scoring position. And then defensively, at least his calling card until his offensive back comes around, we thought we could at least hang our hats on his defense. He had an error today. There was like another play that he probably could have made. Like, we're just going to call it first game nerves for Jordan Lawlar, but did not come out in his debut looking great. Overall, the offense and the pitching did not look great. Did get a Corbin Carroll home run, which we love. Also got a Josh Naylor home run, which we love. But also need to ask the question, why the hell is Joe Mantiply on this D-backs roster? Came into the game with a 14.54 ERA, 11 earned runs in his last 5 outings, and home runs allowed in back-to-back outings. Went out there, allowed another 3 runs. Like, his ERA only jumped 1 run after his performance today because that's how bad he's been this season. Get him off the roster. There's at least 7 pitchers with the Reno Aces right now that I would prefer over Joe Mantiply. I've been kind of an apologist. I love what Joe Mantiply did a few seasons ago when he was the lone D-backs all-star, but we are way past the point where Joe Mantiply should be on the Major League roster. Juan Murillo, he probably also has to be sent back down. I love Murillo. I think he has a future with the D-backs, but just not right now. He gives up too much hard and loud contact, electric stuff. Reminds me of like an early J-Mart or Luis Frias where the ball jumps out of his hands, but he needs to work on the command issues. And I'm hoping he leans more into the J-Mart than the Luis Frias because we see a lot with these young, hard-throwing guys where they need to work on command, need to work on limiting hard contact. And Juan Murillo, I think he's going to have a long career with the D-backs if he can do that, but he has to work on his issues. Also got the debut of Kendall Graveman, who looked good today. Velo a little bit down compared to his career average, but still averaged 95 miles per hour. D-backs offense didn't do anything in this game. The offense really hasn't done anything since that frustrating bullpen loss to the LA Dodgers. But with Erod back on the mound tomorrow, maybe the offense will wake up knowing that they have their work cut out for them in the finale. Now we'll discuss, is this most talented D-backs infield we've ever seen? We'll break it down in segment number 2. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Supply House. Let me get my little banner. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, you use promo code SH5. Again, SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And now I got a fun, more mental exercise for the listeners. You guys can challenge me on this, but I was doing the research today, going through Dbacks franchise history, looking at different lineups, and I kind of came to the conclusion that this is the most talented Dbacks infield we've ever seen. You guys can challenge me. You guys can drop a comment in the YouTube section if you think you've seen a more talented infield in the D-backs franchise history. But you look around the D-backs diamond right now, and I don't know if the D-backs have ever had a better balance of versatility defensively, the offensive ceiling, plus you have a top prospect just coming off the bench. Like, has there been a better infield in D-backs franchise history? Because typically there is a weak link around the infield when thinking about a lot of these D-backs the past few seasons and in their franchise history. Like, as much as I love Nick Ahmed, he was a one-way player, only playing defense, had maybe 1 or 2 seasons where he was the league average offensively, but for the most part, did not really contribute much in the lineup. We know it was all about his glove. But when you look at this D-backs team currently out there in the infield, a guy like Josh Naylor, already an all-star first baseman, coming off a great season with Cleveland last year. He has a 30 home run campaign under his belt. He's got another campaign with a 300 average. Like, this has been a very good offense player for the last couple of years. Comes into the season with the D-backs and has immediately stepped in and filled the role for Christian Walker. Maybe not defensively, but offensively, he's been fantastic this season. And again, what he did tonight, 2 for 5, 4 RBIs, slash line now after the second game of the series, 296, 367, 459. Josh Naylor has been fantastic for the D-backs this year. Ketel Marte, undoubtedly the best second baseman in the sport, coming off a season where he was a MVP finalist. Like, we know Marte, if healthy, if you told someone Marte is going to play 150 games entering the year, you'd probably bet Marte to finish top 3 in MVP voting because that's how talented he is. Geraldo Perdomo, all-star level shortstop, who has only gotten better since his all-star campaign. This is someone that we have to keep in the lineup because of his play discipline, his defense, and he's a clubhouse leader. And then Eugenio Suarez, probably the most flawed of the bunch, but still a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy last season. Someone still with one of the highest barrel percentages and slugs in the National League. Like, still a guy you have to respect if he can get the barrels to the ball. And of course, now we have a top 4 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, just sitting on our bench, trying to work him in as much as possible. I believe this is the most talented D-backs infield ever. And I tried to look at some other years that were probably comparable, but I feel like there's always a weak link when looking at the other D-backs years. 2017, I thought, had a pretty comparable infield because you still had Ketel Marte. You had Paul Goldschmidt, who we know is a fantastic player. Jake Lamb, who was still good. And you also had Brandon Drury and Nick Ahmed. Like, that was a solid infield for the D-backs. But if I had to compare it to 2025, it's definitely not as talented. Ketel Marte hadn't yet popped off in 2017. Jake Lamb was still good, but we know soon after his career kind of unravels. Brandon Drury was just like a solid player. Then, like I mentioned before, Nick Ahmed was just a glove first guy. That 2017 team just didn't have the offensive ceiling of what we're seeing right now. Look at 2019. I think 2019 sneaky is pretty good because 2019, Ketel Marte, the MVP finalist or top 4 in MVP voting that season. Christian Walker coming into his own. Eduardo Escobar, who is a very nice pickup for the D-backs. Wilmer Flores had a fantastic year. And then you also still had Nick Ahmed. I think that might be the infield that's like the closest to the one that we're currently seeing. But even with that being said, I still feel like Perdomo is like the X factor when comparing this year to that year. And then Jordan Lawlar is the other X factor because he could straight up be better than Nick Ahmed. Like, Flores and Ahmed, I just don't think are as good as Perdomo and Jordan Lawlar. And plus, Marte, I just think is an even better player than what he was in 2019. Josh Naylor matching the Christian Walker production, and Eugenio Suarez also matching Eduardo Escobar. I like the 2025 D-backs just a little bit more. The only other team that I could find in D-backs franchise history that might even be comparable was 2007, which was pretty decent with Connor Jackson, Orlando Hudson, Steven Drew, Mark Reynolds, Tony Clark. Like, you go back, I think 4 of those 5 guys had an OPS of at least 800. And so that was probably like one of the few teams, one of the few infield that you can even compare to the 2025 Arizona Diamondbacks. But I challenge you guys, the listeners, can you find another infield better than the one that we're currently seeing out of the Arizona Diamondbacks? Because I think when you go through the D-backs franchise history, from a balance standpoint with the defense of Suarez, Perdomo, Ketel Marte, all those guys are pretty good. Perdomo, Marte could each win a Gold Glove. Then the offensive ceiling, knowing you got 3 of your 4 guys can be all-stars, and Naylor, Perdomo, and Marte. Suarez can still be a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy. And then Jordan Lawlar, the ultimate X factor as a top 5 prospect in all of baseball. I think this is the best D-backs infield we've ever seen. And I wonder how long it's going to be before Jordan Lawlar gets that contract extension. I think like that's the next question for him in terms of his future with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Will Jordan Lawlar get that contract extension sooner rather than later? I believe he has to have a good 2025 season. Basically do what Corbin Carroll did when he came up, had that mini stint with Arizona, and then got the contract extension in the offseason. If Jordan Lawlar finishes 2025 just looking solid, I think the D-backs are going to go into the offseason trying to extend him and trying to get him on a new deal that would be a major bargain and have your core of Fotts, Carrolls, the Lawlars, the Martinezes, just have them all locked up. So very curious to see how Jordan Lawlar looks going forward, especially in the finale, if he's able to come off the bench, because the D-backs are facing Jordan Hicks, who is a right-handed starter. So I wouldn't expect Jordan Lawlar to start in tomorrow's game. But we'll talk more about tomorrow's game and E-Rod starting and if it will be his final start for the D-backs in 2025. We'll break that down in segment number 3. But hey, here's a quick word from our sponsors. And also, I want to talk to you guys about Just Ingredients, because when it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine,
all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. I love that Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk. Just visit justingredients.us/Bryce Harper and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off your first order. And for more wellness tips, follow at just.ingredients on Instagram.
Back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Now let's discuss Erod, and if he doesn't show up in this finale, should the Dbacks swap him with Ryne Nelson? Because currently, when looking at Erod's stats in 2025, they are not looking too hot. Because let me check the stats real quick once again. We're going to go on ERA for National League, because I believe Erod has the worst ERA in the National League, but I just want to double check before I officially say it. Erod, I still actually don't even understand. I'm on Baseball Reference. Somehow Erod still doesn't qualify on Baseball Reference among all starters. Just doesn't make any sense to me. But according to among the qualified pitchers, Trevor Williams has a 5.88 ERA, worst in the National League. Well, Erod, I don't know how he doesn't qualify, considering he also has 8 starts. Like, I actually don't understand. He has 8 starts. He has 40 innings pitched, and somehow he's not on the list of pitchers for ERA. I don't understand, but if he was, he would be number 1 for worst ERA in the National League, because he has a 6.86 ERA in the year of 2025. Absolutely, absolutely insane. But if you want to hear a more insane take, I don't think Erod has been as bad as that number suggests. Erod, his issue is that he's crapped the bed in like the biggest games of the season versus the Dodgers, versus the Mets. But outside of those 2 starts, he's really been fine this season for the D-backs. He's been kind of a strikeout machine. Like, his strikeouts per 9 innings is still pretty good. And if you actually take his ERA in the starts outside of the Dodgers and Mets, it's a 4.6 ERA. Now, when I say that out loud, it doesn't sound great. A 4.6 ERA is not making anyone happy for a guy we're paying $20 million a year annually. But if I have to do a little bit more digging to give Erod some grace, the bullpen also hasn't been Erod's biggest friend, because against the Phillies, Erod left the game with 2 on, 1 out in the 6th inning. Murillo replaced him, gave up a bomb. That could have been a potential near quality start for Erod. He could have left 5 1/3 with 1 earned run. Against the Rays, he left with 2 on, 2 outs. Shelby Miller then came in and allowed both runners to score. That could have been another start where Erod pitched into the 6th, 2 earned runs or fewer. So he kind of has like a 3.8, 3.9 ERA in the starts outside the Dodgers and Mets, which is a lot better than what the ERA suggests. But it does not matter at all if Erod does not look good in the biggest matchups, in the biggest series of the year. And this finale is another case study where if Erod looks bad in a game that has real stakes, a real magnitude, an NL West opponent, someone that we're going to see multiple times in 2025, someone that we will potentially see in the postseason if the D-backs can even make it to the postseason, because they haven't had back-to-back wins, I think, in like 2 weeks since that Mets series. So they are struggling to just string together wins right now. And if Erod goes out there in the finale against the Giants and has another stinker performance, I think it's time to start looking at Ryne Nelson and replacing Erod in the rotation with Ryne Nelson if Erod looks bad. Because so far, Erod only looks good against the weaker competition, and that is a problem. We need starters who look good against all levels of competition. And right now, Erod is not getting the job done. Meanwhile, Ryne Nelson, I think, has looked pretty good, especially in his most recent outing out the pen. And we can't forget, down the stretch last season, Ryne Nelson was that guy for the Arizona Diamondbacks, carrying us. One of the main reasons the D-backs were even in position to have a shot at a wild card berth last season was because of Ryne Nelson and what he did down the stretch for the D-backs in the second half of the season. 10 starts, he had a 3.23 ERA in 64 innings pitched, a 103 whip, 9.4 strikeouts per nine. He was really strong down the stretch. He really showed us a lot. And entering 2025, he was just kind of the odd man out because you had signed Corbin Burns, you still had Gallen, Kelly, and Fott who are locked in. You still had Erod and Monty who are under contract. It was like, even though we know who our best starter was from the previous season, there's just no way for him to fit in the rotation. It was kind of a crazy mental gymnastics game to play, but it kind of was accurate as to why Ryne Nelson wasn't going to crack the D-backs opening day rotation. But now we're at the point where Erod is not getting it done against some of the best competition. And as much as I like Ryne Nelson as a high leverage guy, because to be honest, I do like Ryne Nelson more than some of our relievers, especially in the 7th and 8th inning. Like, knowing Ryne Nelson could be a multi-inning guy, why not give him both the 7th and 8th inning like every 4th day? But the D-backs want Ryne Nelson ultimately to be a starter. That's why he's not really like the go-to high leverage reliever for Arizona. And that is why if Erod struggles in this finale, D-backs already want Ryne Nelson to be a starter. Make him the starter. He clearly looks better than Erod going forward right now. We have more investment in Ryne. Well, I can't even say that because we have a lot of money invested in Erod. But if Erod is just not going to get the job done, if he's not going to look good, why not put Ryne Nelson back in the rotation? Long term, we want him to be a starter. Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, both free agents at the end of this year. We need to give Ryne Nelson a look. Last season, he was great down the stretch, but I can't deny, I don't know if I feel like it's sustainable. The way Ryne Nelson finished last year kind of, gave me the same feeling of Pavin Smith in the 60-game sample size, where it's like, you look fantastic, you look great, it's the best version I've ever seen from you, but is it fluky or is it something we can count on going forward? And for Pavin Smith, I mean, he's had a pretty good season in 2025. For Ryne Nelson, I would love to see if what he did down the stretch last year was legitimate. That's why if Erod struggles in this finale, we should definitely look to Ryne Nelson in the rotation. And then if you do that, you now have your long lefty reliever that the D-backs have been searching for. Joe Manspire gone. He can be replaced with Erod. And then you call up Bryce Jarvis or Christian Mena so you can get your long righty reliever, because we also have to send down Juan Murillo. And so I think it could help out the D-backs bullpen in general as well if you move Ryne Nelson to the rotation, Erod to the bullpen. But also, can this be a learning lesson for Mike Hazen in the front office? D-backs do not have a good track record of signing over-the-hill lefty starters. Mad Bum, Monty, and now Erod, 3 straight busts in free agency. Hopefully, this can be a learning lesson for the D-backs going forward. This might be a offensive slugfest in the finale, because when looking at the reverse ERA leaders after Trevor Williams, the next guy up was Jordan Hicks. Who the D-backs will see in this finale. If it's a slugfest, I prefer the D-backs, but we can't expect anything from this team with how they've been playing recently. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's read some quick comments before we wrap up the podcast today. Corbin Barrows said, "How do we start a petition to DFA Mantiply? Guy must have done some crazy blackmail on Mike Hazen." Corbin Barrows, you might be onto something, because there is literally no justification for playing Joe Mantiply at this point of his career. Then Sausage King of Goodyear, I don't even know if I'm supposed to read that one on air. It said, "Not a fan of Lovello." Sausage King, I agree. I've not been a fan of Lovello in 2025 either. That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.